versus robot.
Hi.
Hi. This is Cyborg versus Robot.
It is. And because you went first last time.
I did.
I'm going first this time.
Perfect.
Thank you. I am Christa, and I am an actual, authentic cyborg.
Oh, and I am 5, and I am a pseudo-robot, and discount Hubot.
Topical.
Yeah, it's topical because this week we are talking about...
The Swedish television series Real Humans.
AKA Äkta, människor.
I'd like to say that because I'm
Sure.
actually a quarter Swedish, and
Sure.
I feel like I want to represent my people. Äkta människor.
Äkta, människor. Episode 1 is called Break In, Break Loose. It first aired January 22nd, 2012. Yeah, and so you can get the show, Amazon UK on DVD, or Swedish Netflix if you speak Swedish, or
Or if you go to Sweden.
Yeah, if you fly to Sweden, watch it there. Or,
Or if you
other ways.
work
If
at
you know
IKEA.
what the internet is.
We're not making assumptions.
Yeah.
Or
we don't know how
making
you watch
recommendations.
it. Or recommendations.
We saw it somehow. We saw it in Sweden. We went to Sweden last weekend.
We're going to fly
on
there
a
every
corporate
week just to
retreat.
watch one episode.
On
at a
behalf
time.
of Cyborg vs. Robot Incorporated. It was like a team building exercise. And we watched it legally on Netflix in Sweden with a translator who was well paid by the hour.
Exactly. This show was created by Lars Lundström and directed by Harold Hamrell, if
The
you
first
care about
episode.
those things.
We are watching the first episode.
Yeah.
I care. I think I have a bite. Is there a bite on my arm? I feel very itchy right here.
Yeah, it does. It looks like you have a bug
We
bite.
were just sitting outside.
Maybe a spider bite.
You know,
maybe it's a Hubot bite.
it might be. I think I've been bitten by a Hubot.
I think you have been.
I think Horton here's a Hubot. Oh, we're not going to mention books.
No, Horton Here's a Hubot would be the best book. I would buy that.
Okay.
I would buy that.
As far as what's happening, my week, I spent a lot of time with people I don't care about. Except I went and saw Camera Obscura
With me.
with you. I do have other friends, like the
Yeah.
friends I don't care about. But you and I went and saw Camera Obscura, and I'd never seen them before. You are can we say big fan? You're a big fan?
I'm a big fan.
You're a big fan. And
Yeah,
I, of course,
definitely.
heard of them because they've been around for a while.
Yep.
And I super fucking loved it. So that was Tuesday.
Yeah,
So we did that on Tuesday.
we did.
And then all my other days of the week I spent with people I don't like. Except, no, do you know what? I'm going to take that back. Ben Surez, I had tequila on
Yeah.
Monday with Ben Surez, and he taught me a lot about tequila in the span of a few hours. And he is also a marvelous musician and played at Hughes Room this week. And I missed his show, but he is not someone I dislike. I will say that I had tequila with Ben Surez, and I think he's an amazing musician. Just gonna say that.
Yeah, so I guess we should probably talk about
Oh,
Real Humans, which you should watch before you listen to, because we're going to spoil some stuff. And it was called Break In, Break Loose.
and it has, I don't know, I mean, based on the subtitled version that I saw, it
Yeah.
has one of the best opening lines of most television series I've seen.
What is it? What is the opening
The
line?
opening line is, "Hello, pumpkin." So in the very opening scene,
The cold open.
yeah, we have a guy driving home. I mean, it's a classic setup as far as it's like a nighttime
Oh,
highway,
totally.
and you see the headlights coming around the corner,
Yeah.
and he's on his cell phone and he's talking to his wife,
Yeah.
and who he apparently calls Pumpkin,
Yeah.
and he's on his way home and he's checking in, and then bam, he hits something.
Oh, yeah. And then body goes flying onto the road, and you hear, there are little, beeping, buzzing
Yeah.
noises from the body.
When he gets out of the car to go
Yeah.
see what he hit, you hear and
And you're not sure what's going
I'm
on.
not sure what's going on, but he knows, and he gets back in the car and he drives over the body and heads home.
But that is because, as he gets back to his car to get back in, he looks into the distance and he sees these silhouettes.
He sees some silhouettes coming over the hill.
Of these people, and he's like...
The moonlit shadows.
And he has this, like...
It's almost set up like a horror.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It is absolutely like a horror.
Actually, the whole first
setup.
scene. And then he gets home and he bursts in, and his wife is named Siri, which...
I know, I noticed that.
Did that come
down.
like pre or post iPhone?
Did you notice when he gets home, one of the first things you see is they shut the door and you see the Äkta människor, which means real humans. And there's this logo with clasped hands with a drop of red blood, and like that's gonna come up in the show a lot.
Yeah.
We don't know what real humans is at this point, but we know that this family's come home, and he comes in the door frantic, and there's this sticker on the door that says real humans.
And I would say, like, actually overall, this whole, as a first episode of a series, they did such an amazing job of hinting to sort of the bigger picture of what's happening, like the shots of the sticker, or you know, and even the shadows coming over the hill, and the little sounds, like they do.
It's classic horror.
It's so good, but they do it so well as far as giving you a little taste of sort of asking questions or suggesting what's coming.
It feels a bit like Spielberg-esque, and like I don't know if you remember like that E.T. scene where they're going after E.T. and like they come over the hill and there's like the silhouettes of the people with guns, although these people don't have guns, but there's the
sort of threat on the
ominous
horizon.
silhouettes.
Yeah, absolutely. And he gets inside and they turn off the lights and they lock the doors, and Siri goes upstairs and he gets the rifle.
Siri doesn't go upstairs. She does this really funny thing because he comes in and he says, "I ran over one of them, Siri." And yeah, I saw the Siri as like the iPhone reference right away.
Yeah.
Gotta be intentional.
You think so?
I can't think it's anything
Perhaps
but.
it's a common Swedish name. I shall
It could be common.
my family.
But I mean, Siri being the thing that's like, and he says her name all the time. She never says his name. I think she says it once. His name is Gusta.
Yeah, no, she says it twice.
Does she? Okay.
Yeah.
And I
They're
love.
inconsequential.
I love
because
Siri,
they get
but
killed
like as he's there with a gun, she's
We've been
carrying
warned.
around this coffee and cake that she promised him on the phone call earlier, and you hear it clanking and rattling on the tray, but she doesn't let it down.
She's in shock.
Until he tells her to
She's
put it
coping.
down.
I
Yeah.
know.
But she follows instructions.
Like Siri. My Siri does not follow instructions well.
So our first view of the people is we see a face walk by the window, which we will later learn is Max.
Yeah.
And then Siri
She screams
loses
around
her shit.
the stairs.
She loses her shit.
That's fair. That'd freak me out.
And then we hear the knock on the door.
Yeah.
Awesome. So far, everything is awesome.
It's a really great opening.
I guess Gusta's freaking out with his rifle.
Well, whoever comes in and says, "We're not going to hurt you," and
they smash through the door.
They smash through the glass and break in. They tie them up. They say, "We're not going to hurt you." I actually, with the episode, wasn't totally clear why they had to go to that house. Later, the character Niska references like, "This was your idea," blah blah. But they break into the house.
We don't know what's going on.
We don't know what's going on, and even by the end of the episode, it's not totally clear.
No.
But so they've broken into the house.
Yeah.
You've seen the person walk by the window. You've seen the person break in, and then finally it cuts to outside, and you see there's sort of a group of them.
Yeah, but before that, when you see the people walk in, you see these people walk in, and they've got like there's this one guy who's kind of scruffy, and everyone else is just. They're these variations of polish. They're not the same kind of polished.
Right.
But they're variations of polish.
And there's something about them that's clearly suspicious.
Yeah.
Or different.
They're weird.
Yeah, which is the first introduction of the Hubots. We don't know yet that they're
we don't know if they're Hubots. We don't know that they're
But you
Hubots
see this
at all.
group of them standing there, and it's kind of the first time you see these characters.
Right.
And then, meanwhile, you have the one that had been hit by the car, and she's lying on the ground.
I didn't get that. I was trying. I looked back at it a few times, and the one woman who is, we later find out is named Mimi, and I couldn't figure out, was she shot? Because Gusta at some point shoots through the glass, and we see a Hubot that's on the other side of the glass dead,
yeah,
lying out, and then we see Mimi farther away.
Oh, wait, so was she
But
shot,
she only has like a cut on her arm.
Or was she the one that was run over? She
Yeah.
says she can't move.
She says she can't move.
So she's lying on the ground.
But she doesn't seem in the right position to be the person who got hit by the car because she's too close to the house.
Okay, so she's injured, but we don't know if it's because she's been shot or because she was... Right.
Yeah,
She's
and when
lying
the
on
car
the
hit
ground.
them, it looked very different. It looked like a very
devastating.
different person.
Okay, you're right. Guy comes out and...
Leo. We haven't
he
found
calls
it
her
as
Leo.
Leo.
No,
yet.
she says
She
it
does.
then. She says his
During
name.
this scene.
During this scene.
Yeah.
I was struck that her name is Mimi because of La Boheme, and also, of course, later the reinterpretation Rent.
Okay.
But anytime I hear someone say like Mimi, because the character in La Boheme, Mimi, she has consumption and she dies,
Okay.
and the retelling in Rent, she has HIV and AIDS and she dies, and Roger and Rodolphus, and so the fact that they sort of named this dying character with the lover who comes running out to her, to me was like all Puccini. That might just be me. But so he
I'll
comes
take
out
that.
and she says she can't move, and they kiss, and he's being called to come inside by the woman, the like Joan Jett character. She's got like a lot of eye makeup.
We don't know her
Clearly
name
the
yet.
leader of the pack. We don't
Yeah.
know her name, but she's like established right
Well,
away.
she's
as
a leader of the pack.
the one in charge. But in the scene, I think she's the one in charge.
Okay.
And she says, "You have to come inside. We need your help with the power." And he's like tending to his girlfriend.
Yeah.
And she says, "I love you," and he doesn't hear her, or he doesn't understand, and he goes inside.
He
and
seems weirded out by that.
Yeah,
He's
and
like,
as he's walking in, she's like, "I love you, Leo. I love you."
yeah.
But he doesn't hear it, and she's like falling.
And she's watching. She's looking at the
she's,
Big
like,
Dipper.
drifting off. She's dying, or something's happening. It's tragic. It's basically a tragic scene.
And she's watching the stars, and we just see the stars move.
Yeah.
So yeah, he goes back in the house
And then a van pulls up.
out of nowhere,
And-
which is probably it's the thing I think in this episode that bothered me the most.
Right. How did they know they were there?
How did they know they were there? Like, they came no time at all. These two guys in a van, and then they grab Mimi, who's like, "Don't drag me away, don't drag me away." And then they zap her with a stun gun, throw her in the back of the van.
Basically, taser. That's also where they kind of establish like the way you can deal with these people who we can tell are a little different is to tase them.
Yeah, but I think that's anybody.
You can tase cyborgs and robots. It's true.
Yeah. And then Leo comes out of the house. He runs out.
Yes, and he wants to save her, but he gets tased, and they get away with Mimi.
And they get away with
So
Mimi.
we don't know who they
And
are.
they leave the other Hubot, which we see in front of the house, who's clearly dead.
Yeah, they bury him.
Or
later.
we don't know it's a Hubot. We see this other body. It's clearly
The
dead.
van takes off with Mimi. This rogue group of outsiders are in the house, and that's the opening. It's killer.
And the van drives off.
Even with the questionable where the van came from, it's like a pretty good.
It's
a
pretty good, 'cause,
opening
like,
scene. I
we
was
don't-
off the bat.
yeah.
I was like, I'm in. I'm gonna watch this whole hour.
Yeah. And then we get the opening. Very spooky music, which is done by Richard Borgard, who
Do you want me to
does
pronounce
the
it in
music.
Swedish?
Yeah, please. Richard Bogart.
Where am I looking? Where's the music? Oh, composer. Yeah, you said it right.
So, okay. You have no idea.
Shush.
So
I am a course.
it's very creepy music. It's really short, and all we really see is the back of a neck with like a USB port. So we're like, okay, we're seeing at least there's a version of technology merged with people.
Yeah.
We don't know quite what it is yet, except that right away we see a commercial for the Hub Max PhD home robot.
So they tell it. They kind of answer your questions pretty quickly as far as like what did we just see?
Yeah.
Because the Hubot characters, like you said, are all kind of polished. They look a bit fake. They have the like really the
perfect
hue of their
skin.
eyes and the sort of not plastic, but yeah, the really perfect sort of shimmery skin. So after the credits, after the opening,
But you get this sense, or at least I got this sense, that there are, and this is not a high budget show. They're saving their money because you don't see a lot of the insides of the robots or the Hubots.
That's true. In the first episode, no, not until the very end.
But whoever the makeup artist is,
Great
because they've got these. In the first scene, we've seen these Ken and Barbie Hubots, which, let's see if I find their names. We see for sure, we see Gordon. They call Gordon by name, and he looks like Ken.
That's true, but they don't pronounce it Gordon in Swedish.
I don't know. How do they pronounce it?
I'm going to let you see it.
It's probably like good.
Yeah, better. Much better.
So we see him, and then there's...
Max.
Well, we see Max, but I think Gordon and, I don't know what her name is.
Is Gordon the young one?
He's the sort of younger one, but he looks like Ken, and then there's another one who... We don't know her name yet, but she looks like Barbie.
She
and
does.
They've got these
Their hair looks like wigs.
Hair looks like bad wigs.
Yeah.
And plasticky skin.
Yeah.
Very plasticky skin. And they look different, though, because you see the other... You're not sure who's people and who are robots at this point in this crowd. We've seen the commercial, which is like, clearly some of the people we saw were these Hubots. But... I didn't really get it. I didn't really get entirely who was a Hubot and who was a person. Like, it's not 100% clear because they're these shades.
They're very humanoid.
Yeah.
And gynoid.
Gynoid? Mm-hmm. Well, that would just specifically be lady robot.
That's my new word.
Totally. So anyway, the show really, then after the credits and the commercial, we get to the kitchen.
The Engman family.
Yeah. Who are the core family in the show, really.
Yeah. Let's talk about their arc, shall we?
Yeah. So when we meet the Engman family, we see Hans, who is the dad, who I'm not sure what he does for a living.
And they're like a middle class family?
Oh, I think they're well off.
She's a lawyer.
She's a lawyer.
Yeah, and you're right. They're
pretty well off.
Family.
They're not. I mean, they're. Yeah, you're probably upper middle class.
And like throughout, I love like everything's very pastel and white, and their home is the sort of the first time you really see that aesthetic as far as the like really light colors, and
the teals,
and everyone's blonde,
and the blues,
and the teal, and so you meet them. It's like breakfast and. The son, Tobias, is trying to do homework. The daughter, Matilda, is trying to make breakfast.
Tobias is probably the only person who anyone would know. His name is Kara Hedebrandt.
I have no idea who that is.
He starred in the Swedish version of Let the Right One In, which was the vampire movie.
Oh.
That they remade. But that everyone says the Swedish version was better.
Probably.
And but it was a big breakout hit. And
he plays Tobias in Real Humans.
But he's probably the person that anyone knows.
Other actors may well be well-established Swedish.
Sure.
We don't know.
But internationally, if you're going to know an actor in this show, it's going to be Tobe.
Tobe. Nickname Tobe, Tobias.
Yep.
So he's trying to help with homework. Hans, the dad, is like, I don't know.
He's figuring out the coffee machine.
He's trying to work the coffee. The daughter, Matilda, is making breakfast.
It is Sophia.
Okay, so there's two daughters. Oh, Matilda's the teenager, yeah. So Sophia's burning breakfast, and they sort of...
Now, Sophia's got pigtails, which I think is important.
Does it remind you of Harriet and Small Wonder?
It does, and I think there are a lot of Small Wonder references. If you're listening to This Is Your First Episode,
you're a long-time listener.
You can go
First-time
back
caller.
and listen to our first episode about Small Wonder, which is weirdly related to this show.
There are parallels.
There are a lot of parallels.
So one of them is that Sophia has pigtails like Harriet.
And that the show opens in the kitchen.
And that you establish the family in the kitchen, the heart of the family home. So they sort of paint this picture of like a flustered family.
Yeah.
The mom comes in, she's hurried. And in the middle of this, they get the phone call. If we're going to talk about the Engman family...
we're talking about the whole Engman family, right?
Okay.
So what happens is...
But they write... So basically, very quickly, again, they do it so well in this episode. Yeah. They sort of paint the tension of this family, that they're under pressure, that Hans is like trying to respond to his kids and he can't.
But at this point, we don't know what's happening.
No.
And then there's a scene in between, but then we get to the next part of the family, Leonard, which is... He's the father-in-law of Hans, who we've met at this point.
Inger's dad.
And Inger's... we haven't met Inger, though, yet.
Oh.
But we just see this car drive up and park so poorly in the shopping mall parking lot.
And we see this details.
It's so well done.
I know.
And I guess it should be noted at this point, it is pretty much a parallel world. It is not the future.
No, it's like
It's
contemporary, current.
It's like if we had these automated domestic assistants, like in Small Wonder. ADAs. They would be, like, this is what they would be like if just...
How it would be integrated.
If basically if in the 80s, Japan poured their money...
Japan!
It's Japan. If Japan poured their money into robots the way that they wanted to in the 80s, and it really took off, and the technology took off, and let's say, I don't know, let's say both Bill Gates and Steve Jobs went and worked for the Hubot Corporation rather than starting their own thing, maybe we would have
It's plausible.
Well, I don't know if it's plausible, but it's the world that they've made. You know, people's phones aren't that different than they are now. People's, like...
Yeah, it's quite... Not much has shifted from what we know.
I love that.
Yeah, me too. So the bad park job, they pull in, and you see Leonard in the passenger seat and Odie in the driver's seat, who is clearly one of the... Odie is clearly one of these robotic people because of his skin and his eye color.
Oh, and he looks so plastic.
Yeah.
Like if you were at any point during this show, I mean, we've only seen these Hubot characters sort of in shadows and in darkness.
And then in the commercial.
In the commercial, they're very well lit. And, like, that is a high-end Hubot, so it's looking very human.
Odie's a bit...
But we are seeing our first Hubot in the world. And it is this bad driver, Odie, who looks so confused. And we cut to the inside of the shopping center. And... we see the shopping cart come around the corner of the aisle. And there's Odie, and he's walking really stiffly, and he's got this blue sweater vest on and the, like, terrible wig, and he's under these fluorescent lights, and, like, he looks so fake. Yeah,
and he's got a very sort of artificial walk.
Precise,
His gait is very, like, clearly mechanical.
Yeah, so Alexander Stocks plays Odie. And he is...
Shout outs to Alexander
He is great. He is so great. Leonard and Odie are probably my favorite relationship in this first episode.
Yeah, I can see that.
I think Leonard loves Odie in the way that, like, my grandmother loved her cat.
Yes. It's a more interesting love. I mean, Mimi and Leo, it's like the romantic love. I mean, that's cliche. Who cares about that? But I agree. I think
we also don't buy it at this point. She's dying, and, like, we haven't seen it.
Exactly.
But we right away see this relationship between Odie and Leonard.
And that they've known each other a long time, and that they have this sort of rapport. And so Odie goes in, and he's grocery shopping.
Yeah.
And gets to the point, because they've had this conversation in the car about the raspberry jam.
Yeah.
And he gets to the aisle, and something happens where he malfunctions.
Yeah, he picks up the jam and
he
looks at it.
Yeah.
And then he picks up the same jar, definitely the same kind.
The one next to it, yeah.
And he picks it up and he looks at it again.
And drops it on the floor.
And then he drops it.
Smash. And then he starts.
And then he just keeps repeating that action where he picks up the jar, looks at it, drops it.
Smash.
Over and over.
And then the, like, grocery store security comes. And they have a way even that they paint that.
But I think that's when the world felt real to me. Like, I think there's something about a computer malfunctioning that makes you think, like, okay, this is what I know. I know. Like,
I know we have to restart.
It's like, I have computers, and I have phones, and I have all of these things, and every time, they don't work all the time.
No. Agreed. I think that's what felt real. But even that when the two guys come around the corner, it's clear that this is sort of routine for them.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, we have the malfunctioning guy in aisle whatever, and they have this little scanner that I think, like, they hold it up and it proves that he's
not a human. He's not a human acting weird.
And they have the little taser, and they're following protocol, and again, it's painted so well that this is, like, a normal thing, and they go up to him and they ask him to stop, and then they tase him. And he falls in this, like, it's such a great shot of him, like, face down in all the raspberry jam. It looks like he's bled to death.
Yeah.
And they make this comment because they go to look for his access port, and they say it's by his ass because he's an old model.
That was the part for me where I discovered it's like, okay, that's why this guy looks so plastic. And some of the other Hubots we saw in the opening,
yeah, because he's an older model. And
then I guess
it goes back to the Engman family.
Well, the show doesn't, but we're going back to the Engman family.
Okay. No, yeah, we're only talking. So as far as their storyline, it goes back to them. They get a phone call from their daughter Matilda, who works at the grocery store, saying like, "Grandpa's robot's here, and he's, he's malfunctioned. We need help." And then that's when we meet Inger. The busy mom of
she
the
comes home
she
from
comes
work.
rushing in, and Hans is on the phone, and the pancakes are burning. And he says, "Can you deal with this?"
I think they're omelets, but
whatever.
Yeah.
Omelets.
Yeah, I think the omelets
another tie to
make
Small
reference to Small Wonder
because of the eggs.
Because of the eggs.
We'll just say that it does.
I'm saying that.
And would you like to say that the jam is also for you a reference to like breaking breakfast?
Well, I think the robot dropping things and
okay.
To me it felt like that was the in Small Wonder when Vicky went wrong, she dropped stuff and broke it, and that
it
felt
happened
like,
to be around breakfast. But so then it's like, well,
I mean that's a stretch. I think there are other things more.
Inger has to deal with it. It's her dad, and she goes to the grocery store to sort of intervene.
When she did you notice when she walks into the grocery store, and this is the first time we actually see the opening of the grocery store.
There's other Hubots sitting there.
They're sitting there being charged.
Yeah.
There are all these charging stations in the opening of the mall.
I did see that.
Which I love. It's that attention to detail,
too. I noticed it too.
Nice. And then
what's that?
Then we see we go up to Odie. Inger gets taken to Odie. Is she taken by Matilda?
Well, no, I don't think we see Matilda still there. But like there's this shot of like they've moved Odie. He's covered in jam. His limbs are splayed.
Oh, he looks so terrible.
He's broken, and Leonard
looks so sad.
Is clearly distressed.
Yeah.
And again, like just in these little interactions, they show that Inger she is not pro Hubot.
No.
And they also again continue to show how much Leonard is attached to Odie because he's really
he's
upset.
so heartbroken.
And then Leonard says, okay, like maybe his most recent inspection he didn't pass, and I'm not supposed to be using him. And she's like, I can't believe you let him drive you.
Yeah.
And it's revealed that Odie basically should be shut down. He needs to be recycled. And she says, you have to take him, you have to recycle him, he doesn't work anymore. Yeah. Do you want me to come with you? Because the thing is, Leonard is very clearly distraught.
Yeah.
And he says, no, I can do this.
We go to the next scene, the recycling center.
Yeah.
Which...
Oh, it's so sad.
I mean, that happens a little later.
And so, I mean, should we stick with Leonard?
Yeah.
So he...
Well, no, I think we can go back to,
family?
Meanwhile, the Engman family are discussing what to do about now Leonard's Hubot is broken.
What do we do?
Who's going to take care of him?
Inger wants him to move in, and Hans is like, no, that's not going to happen.
And I love that discussion too, because they don't say why. They're just they're like, we have room, and he's like, and Hans is like, no, we don't.
Yeah. She
doesn't say anything, but she is agrees.
I know.
And it's just right.
And he's saying, really, the only solution is to get your dad another Hubot. She's reluctant, but otherwise he makes this sort of suggestion that she would have to be working part-time, she's already working, but there would have to be income. Like, how are they going to take care of the father-in-law, the father, and really we have to get him another robot. And then little young Sophia comes in and says, Matilda said that Odie died, and there's a kind of interesting reframing where they said, no, he's broken. He didn't die, he's broken, and sometimes things break and sometimes you can't fix them. And Sophia's upset because Grandpa's buddy Odie is broken, and kind of again sort of referencing this, how do you, especially with a young person, explain the difference, or what might be the difference. I mean, this is clearly explored in the series, but you're attached to this thing, you're attached to Odie, this presence in your life,
this thing which we feel, which so much resembles
has
a person.
Human presence. And then here's this young daughter who is grieving because Odie is broken, and she's trying to understand what broken versus dead is. Yeah. And again, sort of establishing that this show is about those fine lines between artificial intelligence and humans and emotions. And
yeah. Also in that scene, we get the other aspect of the gray area where Inger says a bunch of she basically says, I don't like Hubots at all, and I'd rather not do with them.
She's clearly anti-Hubot.
She says something to the effect that, like, she can have an anti-Hubot opinion without being a
quote-unquote real human.
A quote-unquote real
Yeah,
human.
she says, don't, like, lock me in with those kind of
just because I have an opinion.
So they're making a reference to, again, something we're not sure what it is. We've seen the sticker with the real human.
Real humans.
Thank you.
The Äkta människor.
Thank you.
I think is...
And she's saying, I'm not like that. I just have some opinions.
Yeah.
And he says, I'm trying to not be judgmental.
Yeah, the way people might talk about immigration. Or
yeah.
There are some
It's
conversations
loaded.
you're just like, I don't want to get into that.
Yeah.
Because this world has that feeling of, like, you don't want to talk about.
It's a loaded conversation that this couple is having at the kitchen table.
Yeah, and they've given that to the audience. They're like, there are fanatics about this. There are the real human fanatics, which we saw at the farmhouse. Yeah. Which now, in the sense of seeing the rest of the show, we can look back at that farmhouse and go, like, that guy is kind of like a militia guy.
You're right. I'm living off the grid. I've got my rifle. I'm fending off the Hubots.
He has a really old style phone.
That's great.
He does. He's got this old style phone. He doesn't have, like, a touch screen phone, which I don't know if we see very many phones in the show. At this point, we haven't.
They make a few references to phones. Like when we meet the character Roger and their son, he talks about.
I can't remember if they show us. Oh, no, they show us the home phone at the Engmans, but it's like a landline.
Like a landline.
Which is weird, but.
But maybe
I guess people still have landlines.
We don't know.
No.
We don't know.
No idea.
We're uninformed. So they decide to get the father-in-law, Leonard, a new Hubot.
Yeah.
So
they're gonna do it.
Hans, the dad, he takes the son.
But before that,
Toby, what?
The recycling plant.
Oh, that's such a sad scene.
Yeah, we get to the recycling plant and we see them sawing an arm off of a woman, where we actually see the robot parts.
Yeah, you glimpse these sort of where the robots are being dismantled and dismembered, and you see their limbs removed, and you see them like kind of going through like the conveyor belt into the like compactor.
And we see this mostly whole woman, go into what seems to be like a grinder, and she's just wearing like underwear and a bra.
Yeah,
she's missing like part of a limb.
Left leg.
Left leg. But I got the sense when they cut parts off that they were going to recycle bits.
Mm-hmm. It's sort of this idea of like salvaging parts.
Yeah.
So they take what they can use, and the rest goes into the grinder or the compactor.
Or the recycling, whatever.
And he's sitting there with Odie in the shopping cart, and he's getting like glimpses around the door, and you just see he's heartbroken. I mean, he's devastated. And he's struggling with what to do. Yeah. And there's a really nice shot of like the
but his number comes up. We have
his
this
number
blip,
comes down.
And we're like, his number's up.
Or down.
Which, the lovely shot, but unusual for this show. It seems out of place to me.
When the door comes down and you see him, and then the door moves and he's gone.
To me, it doesn't feel like we're in that space.
Do you know what it was like?
What?
It was like the door being slammed on Harriet. You see her, the door closes, and they're gone.
Disappears. Odie and Leonard.
Another small wonder.
Which I promise, if we do another episode, we're not going to talk about this. Then I guess we
know that he couldn't go through with it.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, cut to, as far as their storyline. As far as the Eggmans, you then see the Hubot market.
We get to the Hubot market, which means we need to backtrack.
Oh.
Because
where are we going?
We're at the Hubot market where Hans and Tobe are going shopping.
Tobias.
His
mother calls him
short
Tobias.
form as Tobe.
Yeah.
Where they're going shopping for the new Hubot. But before we can talk about that, we have to go back to the
rogue robots. The rogue robots who we met. So we go back to them and what's happening.
Let me just look back here, make sure that I get everything.
There's the Joan Jett looking leader, kind of in charge lady, and she's saying, "This was your idea, and we have to get out of here. And what do we do about the people we've tied up? And they're gonna die, or they're gonna tell. And you can't go after Mimi." And he's like, "I'm going after Mimi."
Yeah, And I mean, at this point, we know they are without a doubt Hubots. We've seen enough to know that
so we
they
come
are.
back to them. We're like, oh, that's what
they are. And then you can look at each of them and go like, newer model,
fake.
older model. But Joan Jett, she's very who we don't know her name yet.
No, we're calling her that just for
because
now.
that's what she looks like.
Yeah.
We
There's
do
a
know her
lot
name is
of
nniskor, but Joan Jett is a perfect name for her. She's got these crazy blue eyes.
She's got the hair. She's
but
wearing leather.
that's the only thing about her that looks like a Hubot.
But otherwise, it's pretty
blue eyes.
human.
Yeah. So it's kind of this like, is she human or isn't she? And then she's with Leo, who's the scruffy guy. He's looks like a person. Mm-hmm. And you know what's been happening this whole time? My air conditioning's been on. Shut this off.
The fuzz
It's
in the
okay.
background. But I'm not sweating.
Yeah.
That's nice.
No.
Oh.
There
we had noise that whole time.
Yeah, we had noise that whole time, but that's okay. We'll just...
It's totally fine. Nothing.
Yeah,
is gonna
so now you're listening to it and it's going to be much clearer. Which is great. This is the sort of high quality thing you're going to get from us. So where were we? We were at nniskor, Joan Jett.
Right, so the farmer guy and Syrian husband, they're tied up on the floor. She says this thing about you can't go after Mimi. What about all your father's work? Like, what about we've been like working towards? Like, so she's kind of throwing out all this information, like suggesting that they've got some sort of cause, that they're working towards something, and by him running off to find his girlfriend, he's sort of thwarting their efforts.
Right.
And he's like, no, I'm taking Max out of here. You go to the lake, go to the church, I'll meet you there. And they decide to kind of divide and conquer.
nniskor is going to take the rest of the Hubots that she's got, who I guess were just called rogue Hubots at this moment.
We don't know yet.
We don't know where they came from.
They're the
where
gang.
they're
That's the gang that's there.
Yeah. They're heading to a church where a woman there will help them.
Yeah.
That's all we know. And so then I guess we see nniskor is left to deal with the people in the farmhouse. And she sends off the other Hubots.
Right.
And she's like, I'm going to meet you down by the lake or wherever she says.
And he's like, wait, but. And she's like, just listen and just like, do what
I
say.
Do what you're told.
Yeah.
So we've learned there are clearly like...
She's in charge.
She's in charge. Now, when we got to this point, and then she just stands over the bodies of these two people in the kitchen. Now, at this point, we suspect that she is a Hubot, but we don't know for sure.
And we suspect that she's evil.
Now, so I thought of, when I saw this, I thought of Asimov's rules of robots. Do you know about those?
No.
Asimov's laws. He wrote these 3 laws of robotics in 1942 for a short story called Runaround, which have basically been used ever since as like, when you make a robot, this is the deal about them. So the rules are: 1, a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. 2, a robot must obey orders given to it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. And 3, a robot must protect its own existence as long as its protection does not conflict with the first or second law.
Oh, these are the moral rules of robots.
These are the moral... They're basically like, if you're going to program a robot, you want it to like be unable to hurt humans, and you want it to have to listen to humans.
Huh. So
that they don't... I guess the idea being that like it prevents robot uprisings. So when I saw that, I immediately thought, when nniskor stood above this family, it's like, what is she going to do to them? Mm-hmm. Because they talk about letting them go. Mm-hmm. They talk about letting them get far enough away.
Well, she says, you go ahead, I'm going to wait here, and then I'll release them.
Or she said she'll deal with them, I think.
Do you think is that what she said?
But we get the idea. We don't know what she's going to do.
Right.
And then the black market. And we see...
So the people that ran away with Mimi's body, the like traders, not traitor.
Yeah. So we see Lisette Pagler plays
they have
Mimi.
names.
No, well, Lisette Pagler is the actress who plays Mimi. And we see her. laid out naked on a slab.
Oh, right. Yeah.
With the people who kidnapped her.
Yeah. And she's being, like, assessed for value.
Yeah. And, like, this seedy guy comes in. And he starts assessing her.
Right, and saying she's got bad hair, and she's a Korean model, and...
Well, she's not a Korean model. Like, she's a Korean model in that sense that she could be a Korean model.
We don't...
She's a very attractive lady.
She sure is. But she's not a European build robot, and that...
She's an import.
Right, she's an import, and that really he's only able to sell her as, like, a sex robot, and she's not worth very much, and they kind of finagle the price.
And she has this, like, mark on her arm.
Right, so and he says, they said she's a homebrew, is what they call her, and that she's been tampered with.
They're like, somebody basically built this in their house.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't know if she's any good.
We're going to have to do the work, we're going to have to reinstall
all the software, do all this junk. They basically treat her like a stolen iPhone. Like if...
An unlocked
iPhone, so if somebody finds your phone in a cab, and then they're just like, they decide they're not going to, like, turn it in.
Right.
And they're just going to wipe all the info and, like, sell it. So there's always this risk of somebody discovering the, like, serial number or whatever. But you're like, I can get rid of this. And so we figure that Mimi's going to go into the sex trade at this point.
That's basically what they say. They agree on $6,000 and, like, okay, deal. So
this is the first part where we split off, and then we see Max and Leo.
Right, who've gone off in search of Mimi.
Yep. And then there's this conversation between Max and Leo where they talk about, where Leo says to Max, it's like, if anybody catches us, you let everybody know that you belong to me. Just don't let them show you paperwork.
Right, because you're not free.
Yeah. And one day I'll help you be free.
Yeah, he says, you're not free like Mimi, you're illegal. And then he says... Can I be? And he's like, one day I'll help you, but I can't do it on my own.
So some of these rogue Hubots are free Hubots.
Yeah, so we don't know what that means.
No, and then some of them are like, they're
illegal,
not.
or some are free, some are not free. We don't know.
Yeah.
But that's sort of the first time that idea is introduced there.
Yeah, so they're looking for me. I guess that brings us to, unless we want to talk about Roger to this point. We should talk to Roger. Is the other
Roger is a neighbor of the Engmans. He lives across the street or something with his wife and son, and their Hubot Rick.
Yeah, when we first
we first just meet Roger at work, I think.
No, we actually first see when Inger comes home from work. She drives into her driveway, and we see this very short scene of Roger washing his car. So we know where they live. They live across the street from the Engmans. We see Roger washing his car, and we see this woman who we later learn is Teresa going off for a jog.
Yes, with her Hubot Rick.
With her Hubot Rick.
Who's pretty fitness-oriented.
He's pretty fitness-oriented, but we just see it, it's just a small little scene.
Little nod to them.
And then we get to Roger at work at this distribution plant of some kind, or a manufacturing plant. Do you know what they manufacture? I
didn't notice. No. I don't know what it was.
And he's walking through this plant, right? And he's going to the little break room.
And he see, now I'm confusing sort of what happens with him when at the factory, but he hates Hubots.
Oh, we get that right away.
Yeah, right away.
It's the first time they have this interaction. His boss walks in. Yeah, his boss walks in and says, "Oh, look, we got a new coffee machine."
Yeah.
And Roger sort of looks at it, and all of the Hubots in this plant look pretty similar.
They're all the blonde women.
Yeah.
With like the bangs and the long hair. They're
with
almost
slight variations. Yeah. They're like in a Cabbage Patch Doll kind of way. It's just like, they're Cabbage Patch Kids, but you don't.
Xavier Roberts' son. Yeah. But you're right, very similar. So, and the Hubot helps him make the coffee, and he clearly dislikes them.
Oh.
And he goes home, and his wife is working out again with the Hubot, and it's sort of all about that. Their story is very much the wife, Teresa.
We also meet her son Kevin in the next scene. When they're back at home, we meet their son Kevin.
But I feel like mostly what's happening for
Roger
in the first episode, or in this episode, is just establishing like that he already hates Hubots, and then it gives him more reasons to hate them.
Did you notice when he came home, he walked through the door, and leaning against the stairwell or whatever it was the Hubot box.
Yeah.
So we know that Rick is a pretty new Hubot, and we find out in this scene that
2 months. Yeah.
Teresa bought Rick with some inheritance money.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because Roger works at a factory, so we're like,
how do they afford it?
They can't afford it. So we're getting
Again,
a sense of the world.
all these little things that really flesh out their story in quick references.
Yeah,
it's so good.
But they're like, you couldn't afford this, Hubot,
without the
inheritance,
which she
you're
chose
not a
to
rich
spend
family.
on that and not
on anything else.
Mm-mm.
She's like, I got this exercise Hubot
companion.
Mm-hmm.
They watch TV together. They hold hands.
Yep.
So there's this attachment between Teresa and Rick. The son is even you were going to help me fix my computer, but Rick helped me. Don't worry about it. Roger eventually loses his shit and beats up Rick. Because I feel like all that's happening for him in the first episode is establishing that he hates them. And it's giving him more reason because he's got this tension at home. His wife is basically not paying attention to him because of Hubot. Right. He wants the Hubot kicked out, and then she leaves.
Yeah, and do we see much of... I guess we go back... We see Roger again. The next time we see Roger...
It's at the end.
No, he's back at the factory.
Oh, the factory.
But there's the factory...
It's just, again, it's still just reiterating his irritation and how he's put out by the robots, and there's this interaction with, his supervisor where she's like, they needed to be charged, and there was a power outage, and they told you. I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
Can we skip that scene?
Well, he does do... There's this one aspect where they're like, humans have the error rate of 11%.
Right.
You need humans on the floor to, there's no one in charge.
Mm-hmm.
So we find that out, which I think is important. So I think that was worth talking about.
Fine, I was going to skip it.
But if you want to get back to the Hubot market...
Sure do. I love the Hubot market.
Hubot market is great.
It's so rad.
We see a bit of the commercial again.
Yeah, we see a bit of that commercial. Yeah. We see a few different types of Hubots.
I got them all.
What are they?
So the type of the models that you can get at the Hubot market, all the signage is in English, which is very helpful when you're doing a podcast where you want to talk about these things. So there are these there's the fitness model, which we've already seen with Rick.
Yeah.
There is the handyman Hubot,
right,
which they show them sawing, and there's a little sign that comes up on this little screen, and we find out they are all made in Japan.
Right.
Which I noticed.
It's funny. Mm-hmm.
Tobias, while he's walking through, he touches the arm of this robot with green eyes, who is a companion Hubot, or a sex bot, or whatever you call her. Then there's the ones that we've seen in the factory in coveralls, which seem to be the base model.
Yeah.
Which they're the ones that when Hans and Toba go in, they stand in front of the cheap model. Yeah. Like everyone would in a store.
And then can we make do with this?
And Leonard, I guess Leonard is still there.
Right.
And the other ones I noticed in the background, which they don't even stand in front of, is the butler-made chauffeur, which they've got those. There's a Harajuku model, like a Sweet Lolita style, where there are these...
with the curls?
With the curls.
Yeah, I was
and there's
what is that?
A man holding a teddy bear.
Yes! Just in the back.
Yeah, and then there is one other model, but I think it's important before we mention the other model. We meet, I don't know if we know his name, but I found his name from the cast list. We meet Jonas Boberg.
Probably Jonas.
Jonas
That's
Boberg.
My Swedish blood.
And we saw him last in the black market buying Mimi.
Ah.
And we find out that this guy in the black market is also a sleazy sales guy at the Hubot market.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So he walks up to...
And he's all salesman.
Yeah.
And he kind of takes over and, and says, these can, microwave a dinner and do the basics, but they're not going to make you a lamb dinner or drive the car. And Leonard says, well, they have to be able to drive a car. And he goes, well, I have just the thing. And so they go over to what is the geriatric model.
Which is what it's called.
Yeah, it is. When he makes the phone call, it's the Hubot that's designed for... The geriatric Hube that's designed for senior citizens, and it can do heavy lifting. It could drive an 18-wheeler if needed. It knows CPR.
Yeah.
It's volume adjustable for the hearing impaired, and it can provide companionship for those lonely nights,
right,
if needed.
Would you like to know her model number?
Yes.
She who will later find out is named Vera.
The one they get is called Vera.
The one they get is called Vera, and she looks like Kathy Bates in Misery.
She does.
So much of that.
But dressed like Small Wonder in the little
in the pinafore,
mm-hmm.
which is so creepy. So she is a PhD model, which is top of the line.
PhD.
Well, they mentioned that in the commercial. That's
really?
the one they mentioned in the commercial.
Oh, okay.
The one in the commercial is a Hub Max PhD.
Right.
Home model. So this
top of the line.
This is a PhD G205 EU4K. And would you like to know how much Vera retails for?
I would.
$575,000. Or kroner, I guess.
Who knows?
Which I don't know how much that is.
Because in the subtitles they just say dollars, but I don't know if in the episode
it could be,
actually, yeah.
But we're not sure this is Sweden. This is just somewhere. So, but it's still...
But Hans is basically like, we can't afford this.
He is. And then sleazy sales guy Jonas is like, well, normally there's a 3-month wait.
Yeah. He plays the total low blow salesman like move where he's like, normally we wouldn't have these, but we just got one returned and let me make a phone call.
Or like somebody didn't pick theirs up or something.
And meanwhile, father-in-law is like, if she can drive whatever, I'm out of here, I'm going for
he's
coffee.
Clearly still heartbroken.
He's like, I just want Odie, I hate this shit, call me.
He's like, get whatever.
He's just like,
He's like, get whatever you want.
Also the son is, he says he's going to go wander around.
Which we assume he's going back to the sex spots.
Pretty much. So then Hans is sort of left there to his own devices with the salesman who's like, let me just make a phone call, and he finds out there's, that one returned PhD, whatever, is there, and like, hold it for me. And he starts to kind of put the pressure on Hans. And they go into the office to start talking about the deal.
Mm-hmm.
And Hans is still like, I'd like to think about it. And the salesman, Jonas, is pressuring him. Vera comes in and serves coffee to help like sweeten the deal.
And then
Jonas like relates the story about how they like got that model for his family or whatever.
The kids all saved up.
The kids all pitched in.
And we were like, total bullshit. We can all see through that.
It's the salesman moves times a million. And then he says, what if I throw in a Hubot and a second Hubot for free?
Which is when we see that like he bought that $6,000 model at the like black market just for shit like this.
Yeah.
He's just like, this is my freebie, cost me nothing. And so he probably, like, I don't know how much he makes off of these deals, but like clearly he's a commissioned sales guy, and like this is his thing.
But we don't know yet when he says, well, I'll give you one for free, which
no, we don't, but we know he's buying, like,
I mean, know, you're right.
We can guess. We
can
guess
I didn't
it's
guess.
gonna be. You didn't?
No.
Well, he went and bought the, like, I guess it could have been one of the other ones he bought, but that's the only one we saw that they stole.
Right. I didn't actually piece it together, but it would make sense for most people to do that.
Yeah. So then we see, so the next thing we see...
So Hans goes home. Neighbor Roger sees...
He's weed whacking.
He's weed whacking, and he's like, oh, great, fuck you, you got a Hubot.
Yeah.
Hans and Tobias bring the Hubot into the house.
Yeah.
Sophia comes downstairs. Matilda comes downstairs. They open the box. It's Mimi. She's all cleaned up and in a little dress.
A little green dress, which is totally the color. And Tobe has these green headphones through the show, which are the same color as that dress. He wears them all the time. They're around his neck, these headphones.
Okay.
Which they're great. And she's looking all cleaned up.
Yeah.
She's wholesome.
And all the kids come downstairs, and Hans says, I haven't told Mom yet. Mom comes home.
Yeah.
And realizes...
Sophie asks if she's real.
Yeah. And then he says, well, it's a Hubot. And she says, is it a real Hubot? Yeah.
They start her up in demo mode by pressing under her arm.
They turn her on via her armpit. Thank you. That's a word. And Inger comes home and kind of glances over at who we know as Mimi And then to confirm her suspicions, lifts the hair and sees the USB port on the back of her neck and is like, garage now.
Right.
And like commands the husband to go have a conversation. So Inger and Hans have this conversation in the garage where she is like, I want. Oh, it's again, they're there.
Because they're just like,
so good.
Here's the U-Bot. And he looks so guilty.
He's so guilty. And she's like, I want my children to know like the people who raised them. And he's like, but we're so burnt out and we need help. And she's like, but what about Tobias, like our teenager, and what's he gonna do? Like, you know that the kid, like,
he's 15 years old.
He's 15. What's he gonna do?
And she's like, does this? What
are the services she provides?
Yeah. Does she have sex? And Hans is like, I don't think so. She's a family model. And he's like, do you really know? And it's like, I don't know.
Exactly. And then she agrees to 2 weeks. She's like, fine, we try for 2 weeks.
Did you notice in the garage there was a bowling pinball machine?
I did.
Which it's that other aspect of just thinking like within these people's lifetimes, there were still pinball machines, which is why they have it in their garage. It's like at some point during their lifetime they had a pinball machine in the house.
But you know how much we bitched about the Small Wonder art production and how like thoughtless it was? Like, it's a really thoughtful production on Real Humans.
It does feel like they give you right away with that coffee machine. They got that complex coffee machine.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a family that's like into gadgets. They're into new gadgets. The coffee machine is all that you need to sell it. You're like, they have a coffee machine that's high tech and they're figuring it out with the manual. So when we get to when they buy a Hubot, and their house is a mess, and when they get to the Hubot, it totally makes sense that they would like these gadgets.
Yeah. So she agrees to try it.
Yeah.
And then she kind of disappears. She's not in the following scenes, where it's basically just the father and the son
doing the setup
of the Hubot.
Which is the kind of thing I would do.
Oh no, Sophia's there because Sophia being the kid and Sophia having these blurred lines of what's real or not real or what's dead or broken, and she says, "What's your name?" And Mimi says, "I don't have one yet."
Yeah.
But she's awake, like Mimi's awake, and she's sitting up and she's changed her clothes, and Sophia sort of crosses over and sits next to her on the couch and goes to like talk to her, even though the other ones are sitting there like across the table.
Next scene. Hans is setting up the Hubot with this weird little iPad-like device.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there and he does the thing. He just types in Anita.
Right.
And then he's kind of like, am I doing this right? Like I guess it's got this intuitive step-by-step interface where you're like, you're setting up your device, much like you'd set up your phone. And they're like, I feel like you probably should have had to type in Anita twice.
Yeah. Right, confirm. Please confirm
that you want to name your Hubot Anita, because like otherwise you got to reboot this.
And then that's when Hans has this conversation with the son about like, she's not a plaything.
Well, it's because he flips open this little credit card.
What was that little thing?
It's like this little it looks like a business card holder box.
Yeah.
And then he opens it up and there's this like sexy couple in an embrace with a tiny little chip.
Yeah. Which
you're like, okay, you push this chip in somewhere.
Yeah.
And then it enables
sexy times.
So
and Hans sees that and he kind of hides it.
Oh, it's time for you to go to bed, Toby.
Yeah, and he almost puts it away in a drawer, and then he decides.
He almost throws it in the garbage.
Right, but he keeps it.
He throws it in his pocket.
So he's having those thoughts, but meanwhile has this conversation with Tobias saying she's not a plaything and don't do anything foolish, and Tobias is like, whatever, Dad, and kind of walks away.
Yeah, he goes to bed.
But you see the kind of the thoughts going through Hans's head of like, oh, okay, and he sort of looks at, and now she's named Anita. We know her as Mimi, but now she's been named Anita by the Engman family.
Yep.
And he, is kind of eyeing her.
And then back to Leonard's house. Well, Leonard is asleep in bed. And Vera in her
there's this creepy music. They go back to the sort of horror feel.
The horror feel, and like Vera walks in the room and she just reaches out while he's sleeping and touches his cheek. And there's this little blip. This little blip noise. And then that's it. That's the scene.
Yep.
Creepy.
Yeah. But their next scene together.
Well, do we want to go back to talking about the rogue robots, or do we want to keep talking about
should we check in with them? So meanwhile, Niska, who we're calling her that, which hasn't been named, but you see
well, before that, the black market guys come to the farmhouse.
The black market guys come to the farmhouse and they find the couple dead on the floor.
Yeah, which so we've realized now, if you are following Asimov's laws of robotics, that clearly Hubots, or at least these rogue Hubots, do not
follow the rules.
They have broken these rules.
And just to super spell it out for you, it then cuts to
And it's pretty graphic.
It is graphic. It's quite bloody. And then it instantly goes to her topless at like the lake, rinsing out her bloody clothing. So there's no question.
Yeah. And we just see that, like, between her shoulder blades, basically, a little above, is a USB.
Yeah, so it confirms that she is a Hubot, and it shows you that she definitely killed the couple because she's cleaning out her
bloody shirt.
But it does also, like, sexualize her. I mean, she's this, like, beautiful one, and she's strong.
But she's got birthmarks. And, like, she's also got that same mark that Mimi had.
Like a tattoo.
That weird tattoo
on the
mark
arm?
on her arm.
Yeah. And then she has the conversation. Who's the guy who they talk to, like, saying, we've got to keep walking, and it's going to take us a few days to get to the church, but that's the plan.
That's when, so once that happens, we go back to, so Niska is at the lake washing at her shirt, and then we go to the rogue Hubots sort of walking through the woods. One of them sort of craps out and, like, falls over.
Yeah.
And then they pull up his shirt and they just see this, like, antifreeze blue,
which only made me think of, like, the, like, Always commercials. It just makes me look like the pseudo menstruation. The same blue fluid.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. And then that, I think, is when Niska comes back and rejoins this group.
Right.
Like, I get the sense that she's caught up with them.
Yeah.
And she's like, he's gone.
Yeah, and then there's this... he's lying dead on the ground, and they cut open his head. She does. She takes a knife, slices open his head. The blue antifreeze / in place of menstruation fluid, like, seeping out of his head, and she reaches in and pulls out his purple Hubot brain. It looks like
the jelly crystal,
it looks like Jello
plastic,
crystal kind of thing. This, like,
semi-clear,
sort of fist-sized, purple glob, but it's not.
It seems solid. It seems like
it's definitely
like
solid.
a clear plastic or acrylic or something.
And
it's gooey.
And she throws it into the lake.
Yeah. What I don't get from that is if they're, like, people, and I guess we'll find this out maybe, if they're machines and they're dying, could you not transfer their brains to another Hubot?
Oh.
Because she tosses it in the lake, and I get this... I don't understand that aspect, because it's just like, if that's the person, like, why don't we keep it?
Oh.
And then we can install it.
Because they're sort of suggesting that if someone accessed that, they might access information or something. Like, it needs to be destroyed or thrown in the lake. Or is it just ceremonial? Is this, like, a ritualistic thing?
It's weird.
Yeah, they don't fully explain it, but they do. They show that, like, he's dead, we're taking out the purple brain and destroying, or, like, hiding it.
And then we...
then they start their walk, their pilgrimage to the church.
And then we go back to Max and Leo.
Right. So Max is on the search for Mimi. Leo, and he's taken Max with him.
Yeah.
They try to check into a hotel. The hotel has no Hubots.
No dogs.
Because we have trouble with foul bots.
Yeah, foul hubs.
Foul hubs, that's right.
Because
the police are, like, cracking down on illegal robots. And
so they don't stay in the hotel.
They don't, because it's going to blow their cover. So they move on, and they go to some other, like, it's not yet Hubot heaven, but some other kind of trading black market guy who says, like...
No, that's a different thing. That starts at the Rent-A-Hub.
What? Oh, yeah,
you missed the part where they go off to the station house, and, like, it's a station house in a train yard or something. They hook up a computer, and they get a laser printout of Mimi. And then there's a dream sequence.
A flashback.
Yeah, but before we do the dream sequence, because this is... So we get this flashback of this little boy playing catch with Mimi.
Yeah.
It's, like, all white dissolved, and there's, like, Vaseline on the lens.
Although I don't think they do it that way
and it's
anymore.
all overexposed, but it's got that, like, everything's sort of
It's the childhood time, and this kid is playing catch with Mimi, and then we learn that...
Oh, no, all at this point, all we see is he just has this look of horror, and then it goes back.
But it's suggesting that Leo has known Mimi since he was a kid.
Yeah,
Leo is human.
Yeah.
And that he's known Mimi for a long time.
Yeah. And then we go to the Rent-A-Hub.
There we are. Thank you.
And that is where we learn.
That's where the guy says, try Hubot Heaven because she's probably been...
Yeah, because 95% of the stolen Hubots end up as sex hubs.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, why don't you rent one? And then he points to his rentals.
Yeah.
And we see 2 more versions of Max.
Yeah.
He's such a cheap model that they don't bother making them look different.
Right, he's been mass-produced.
Yeah. He's an older handyman robot. There's a poster on the wall. Then they leave. And he says what you said, have you heard of Hubot Heaven?
Yeah.
And here's a hat. And he hands them his Rent-A-Hub hat.
Yeah. So what happens in the last 5 minutes of the show?
The rest of the Engman family.
Okay.
The couple of scenes where Inger gets up in the morning and she goes, this is the day after they've
just gotten
Anita.
Mimi/Anita.
She's all set up overnight while Inger is presumably gone to bed.
Which, like, it takes longer to install your iPhone,
iOS.
Man. Like, you can't.
Well, we don't know how late they stayed up because he sends.
Okay, that's true.
He sends Tobe to bed, and it's like, you're up really late. You got to go to bed. We don't know what time it is. And so he sets her up. He probably goes to bed. Inger gets up in the morning. She's going to get her coffee.
She looks
and
over.
Then the camera pulls back.
Yeah, and the breakfast table has been set, and all the meal has been made, and Anita is standing at the end of the table, sort of waiting to present it, and she pulls out the chair. Yeah. And Inger, who was seemingly just going to, like, grab her coffee and run, is
now
getting to have breakfast and sits down, and Sophia comes in. It's good morning, honey.
Oh, Sophia is amazing in this scene. She comes in. It's like they've always had a Hubot, and she's like, "Give me my blue spoon. Scratch my back."
Because she knows it from a friend's house. And the family gets to sit down and, like, have breakfast together in a way that they haven't done before.
Matilda, I think she comes in and she's just kind of like, this happens every day. It's like like the normal teenager thing. Yep. Tobe kind of looks like, oh, this is weird. What's going on? Mm-hmm. And then Hans comes in. Which, what did you think of, like, when Hans came in?
He's happy about it.
Yeah.
He feels pretty good.
Yeah. This 2 weeks thing, I don't even need this. It's like, I'm pretty sure
we've sealed the deal.
Pretty sure we've sealed the deal with this one morning. Mm-hmm. And I guess the last part we see of the Engman family before we get to the last 5 minutes of the show is another scene back at Leonard's with Vera.
So the house is dirty. She's not pleased.
Yeah.
She says that she's, like, diagnosed him with hypertension, which I guess is what happened when she touched his cheek in the middle of the night. The creepy scene where she, like, sneaks in on him sleeping. Yeah. So she's refusing to serve him coffee. Yeah. She's only giving him tea. He's so clearly unhappy with her, and she is taking charge. Yeah. Yeah.
So, sorry, I know you wanted to talk... Now we're back to Hubot Heaven. I know you wanted to talk about it. You seemed so...
I was only trying to, like, just wrap it up.
Because this opens up... I feel like these last moments of the show open up to the next thing.
Yeah. It's the way the episode... It's such a great first episode. They establish this, like, tension between... people who are sort of pro or anti-Hubot. They establish the dynamics in the family, in the Engman family. The Roger dynamic is set up quickly, and then they also, each sort of character line is also very clearly established as, like, now what are they after? Where are they going?
Yeah. We see that the Hubots are different. They're not all the same models.
Yeah.
They seem to have different even operating systems, if you want to call it that, because Max, for instance, seems really simple. He seems like a child. Yeah. And then Nniskor, who we've seen, she is clearly one of those PhD models.
Yeah.
Because she's smart. She might even be the same. She might even be. I would have to look at the commercial eyeliner again. The commercial where they show.
She might be the same face.
It wouldn't surprise me. I don't think it is. I think that would be too on point.
Right.
But she's clearly an upper echelon, high price model. Yeah, I don't know. The world feels really real. Mm-hmm. So then we see Hubot Heaven with its flickering little neon sign in a graffiti covered alleyway. Mm-hmm. And there's this woman. We see this woman walk out. and she's like out of a film from the 40s. She's got like one blue eye and one like burgundy eye or like red eye. And
I did not see that.
oh, she comes out and then she goes to a car, and then there's these two burly guys, these two big guys come out of the Hubot heaven, and they go to a car. And I do not know if this noirish lady with the multicolored eyes, if she's a Hubot or a human, or like she's being hired by these guys, or she's a free Hubot. Like there's nothing, but she's somebody. She's gonna come up at some point. Otherwise, it's too weird. They gave her too big of an introduction. And then we see Max and Leo walk into Hubot heaven.
And that's where that's the last we see of them.
Yeah.
The last we see of Roger.
Well, we next see Anita helping Toby with his homework.
You know, we see that Anita's are doing really well in the home. So that's where we end with the Engmans. Ingrid leaves the house, and Ingrid's walking down the street. And she runs into Teresa, who's packing up a truck and says, I'm leaving.
Here's my number.
Yeah. And she's left a note for Roger that says, I can't live like this.
Yep. And then that's when Roger slaps his real human sticker on the door.
Yeah, because he also is like, I can't live like this.
And shuts the door.
Yeah.
And then we end probably where we should with Leonard.
Yeah. So he's trying to escape horrible Vera. He goes downstairs.
Oh, Vera's vacuuming and she's just lifting up the furniture like it's nothing.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Totally intrusive, though, and he just wants to escape. He goes down into like his basement or his garage.
He goes down to his basement and it's like a workroom.
Yeah.
We see the shot of Vera at the top of the stairs.
She's suspicious.
It's from underneath, so we're shooting up at her, and it so looks like it's out of Misery. If she was or like Psycho, it seems very Hitchcock.
Yeah.
The view that we see of her, and she just looks terrifying.
Yeah.
And
she's scary.
So he goes into this room, and we see Odie leaning against a wall.
We actually, until that point, didn't know what he did with Odie. No. We knew that he didn't go with the recycling, but you see that he's sort of propped up Odie in the basement.
Yeah.
And he sits down like he's about to speak to like a grave.
Yeah.
You know, that he has this like longing, and he's sad, and he just wants to talk to Odie, and almost in like a futile attempt, he knows it's like worthless. He reaches over and tries to power him up. A couple times, you know, it doesn't work. And
he just leaves him.
And he just sits down, he's deflated, and then you hear the little zzz, and Odie opens his eyes.
And says hello. And it's so good.
Such a good ending. Just this bright blue eyes of Odie saying hello.
Yeah, which is awesome.
It's awesome.
So that's where it ends. And
so we like that one. So we recommend
recommend
Real Humans, Cyborg and Robot versus whatever. Wait, who are we?
Who are we? Oh yeah, this I guess this would be the second episode of Cyborg versus Robot, and you can find us online at Cyborg versus Robot VS on Twitter, and Cyborg versus Robot, all spelled out, the verses, on Facebook.
Yes.
And that will lead you to wherever else. And if you just want to pay attention to me, I am on Twitter as @NowWeAre5.
And I'm @Christa Couture.
So yeah, this has been Cyborg versus Robot, and we will see you next time.